Dawn poured through the narrow kitchen window of the Brixton student house, tinting the kettle's steam a molten orange. Thandika Moyo, final-year geology master's student at WITS, leafed through her field notebook while her tea brewed. The previous night she had watched core samples from the Western Basin glow like tiny lanterns under the fluorescent lab lights. Lumino-auriferous ore, her supervisor had called it, gold shot through with something that stored sunlight the way quartz stores static electricity. She had pressed her ear to the specimen jar and thought, for an instant, that she heard a faint humming, a lullaby without words. Her phone buzzed, an alert from ENCA. Cave-in at Mainlong, 4 gold mining miners missing. The article said the collapse had happened 2 hours before sunrise, nearly a kilometre underground, near a face where the new luminous veins had been discovered. Management believed the men were still alive, but sealed behind 30 metres of rock. Thandika felt a pang that was equal parts compassion and curiosity. She grabbed her backpack, notebook, and an old portable recorder, then sprinted for the Rie Vaya bus. Johannesburg's skyline slid past, ridges of mine dumps like sleeping gold dragons in the morning haze. Billboards promised fortunes to those who invested in the new sun metal, whose luminescence they claimed would revolutionize electronics. Thandika's supervisor, Professor de Klerk, had warned her, whatever's making that gold glow, it isn't a normal impurity. Treat it like radium beautiful, but treacherous. She had assumed he was exaggerating. Now she wondered. At Mamilong 4, the surface works throbbed with generators and anxious voices. Families huddled beside security fences, journalists angled for statements. Thandika ducked under a tape barrier and flashed her WITS ID. The shift boss, a burly woman named Lirato Ndlovu, hesitated, but eventually waved her through. "We're bringing in narrowing heads and jackhammers," Lirato said, sweat shining on her temples. "But if we fracture the wrong slab, we'll flood the chamber with rubble and crush them." "You're a rock doctor. Got any better ideas?" "I'm not a doctor yet," Thandika said, swallowing. "But show me the seismic data and the last mapping survey." They descended to a control room where holographic schematics floated over a table. The collapse zone pulsed red. Behind it, indicated by dotted lines, was an unexplored cavity labelled Anomaly A, discovered mere days earlier. Lirato jabbed the image. They were blasting toward that anomaly when the face just flowed shut, like molten wax. "Flowed?" Thandika repeated. "Rock doesn't flow at 30 degrees centigrade," Lirato said. "Except this did." A shiver travelled up Thandika's spine. She asked for the audio logs microphones dotted along the tunnels, recorded every noise from drills to trivial chatter, a safety protocol. Lirato complied. Thandika slipped on headphones. At first she heard only drills and muted conversation in Sotho and Zulu. Then, 3 minutes before the collapse, something new, a leisurely resonant chord, as if a choir were holding one unbroken note, deep underground. The frequency meter ticked at precisely 528 Hz. The miracle tone some internet mystics claimed could repair DNA. Thandika frowned. She recognized it from the hum she had imagined in the lab. The note rose, shimmering. The miners shouted, "Lessing, light!" And then came the grinding roar of rock in motion, followed by silence. Thandika rewound, isolating the tone. She ran Fourier analysis on her tablet. The waveform wasn't a single pitch, but a braid of harmonic overtones, fractal in complexity, echoing patterns she'd seen in crystallographic diffraction. Something inside the rock was singing. Another shiver, sharper this time. She recalled a Basotho myth her grandmother told on winter nights. Long ago, the sun shattered in grief when its first child died, scattering flecks of itself across the land. Those fragments burrowed into the earth, waiting to be reborn. Miners, Gran warned, must never whistle underground, lest they awaken the living light and get swallowed. Folklore or not, 7 people were trapped. Thandika shut her computer. We need to get a microphone down that block drift, see if the tone's still present. Also a fibre optic camera. If we know what we're dealing with, maybe we can counteract it. Lorato blew out a breath. You think the rock will open if we play the right music? I don't know, Thandika admitted, but I have a hunch. An hour later, they fed a thin borehole line through a crack at the top of the collapse. The cable slid more easily than expected, reaching an air pocket on the other side. Thandika plugged the mic into the control board. A soft phosphorescent hiss filled the speakers. Underneath pulsed that same 528 Hz chord, now quieter but more intricate, weaving high glassy notes through deep organ rumbles. It sounded alive, patient, curious. Suddenly a voice, hoarse but clear, broke through. Hello, anyone there? Miners still breathing. The control room erupted in cheers that quickly dissolved into sobs. Lorato pressed the transmit button. It's Lorato. We hear you, Cello. Hold tight. They strained to catch Cello's words. We're in a cave of light, he said. The walls glow. They move when we touch them, like jelly. We tried digging, but the picks melt. The light keeps singing, one of the engineers cursed under his breath. Thandika muted the mic and searched her recorder for the lullaby she half remembered. Her grandmother's voice, taped years ago, fluttered from the tiny speaker. Thula, Thula, Nguana. The sun sleeps in stones. The melody nested perfectly within the 528 Hz scale. She overlaid the recording with the mine audio. The oscilloscopes displayed near-mirror waveforms. Could a simple lullaby break or redirect this seismic symphony? She dared not ask permission from corporate headquarters. They'd drown her in risk assessments. Instead, she asked Lorato for 1 hour and a descent team. Lorato eyed the trembling families outside. Do it, she said. They suited up, hard hats, respirators, seismic beacons. Thandika carried a compact speaker array, 2 handheld tuning forks, and a coil of luminous rock sample for comparison. The hoist cage rattled down the shaft, past graffiti of St. Barbara, patroness of miners. At levels 1, 2, and 3, normal sodium lamps glared yellow. By level 4, the air changed cooler, tinged with honeysuckle. Dim veins along the tunnel walls emitted their own pale gold radiance, enough to cast shadows. Pumps throbbed like distant heartbeats. The collapse site resembled a melted candle. Walls bulged outward, dribbles of semi-fused quartz draped like wax. Yet when Thandika pressed a gloved palm to the surface, it felt solid and cold. The speaker array took positions against the bulge. She inhaled, lifted a tuning fork tuned to 528 Hz, and struck it. The note bloomed in the tunnel, mingling with faint subterranean echo. Next, she cued her grandmother's lullaby, slowed to half speed, letting it seep through the rock. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then Lorato gasped. The wall rippled, not buckled or cracked, ripples like wind on water. Threads of light within the ore brightened, responding to each musical phrase. Thandika's heart hammered. She raised her own voice, singing along, improvising harmonies. Her throat vibrated as if the stone itself were a second pair of vocal cords. A vertical fissure appeared, widening by centimeters, revealing shimmering mist. A chorus of overlapping notes spilled out, neither hostile nor welcoming, simply vast, as if the mine opened into cathedral space, carved from sunrise. The rescue team exchanged fearful glances, but Thandika stepped through. The fissure yawned wider to accommodate the others. Beyond lay a cavern more extraordinary than any geode, honeycombed arches of translucent gold, veins of quartz flowing like molten glass, and everywhere a soft daylight detached from any source, painting skin with warm highlights. In the center, on an island of solid rock, knelt 5 miners. 2 more lay nearby, cradled by co-workers, injured but alive. Their faces glistened with sweat and reflected radiance. Cello looked up, tears streaking luminous dust. "We tried to follow the tunnel you opened, but it closed behind us," he said. "The light kept us from suffocating. There's air here somehow, but we can't leave." Thandeka knelt, examining a melted helmet. "The stone isn't stone anymore," she said. "It's photonic fluid. It reacts to sound, maybe even thought, given time. We have to persuade it to let us go." She noticed filaments of light curling playfully around her boots, like inquisitive sea anemones. She hummed a minor chord. The filaments recoiled, not in pain, but surprise. A major chord, gentle and rising, drew them nearer again. The cave was listening. "What does it want?" Cello asked. Thandeka recalled evenings when her grandmother explained that songs were bridges. Sung properly, they allowed two worlds to feel each other without touching. Perhaps the living light wasn't malicious, merely lonely after millennia entombed. It had found new mouths, miners whistling, drills whining and answered in kind, inadvertently flooding passages. She stood and addressed the cave, feeling ridiculous yet deadly earnest. "We hear you," she said, letting each syllable resonate. "Your children are lost. Let them return to the other sun." A cascade of harmonics rippled through the pillars, approaching the tonal flavor of a question. She realized it spoke music, the way humans speak words. So she sang the lullaby again. But this time she changed the last line. "O robale, ngwana, return with the dawn." She modulated the melody to resolve upward instead of downward, suggesting release rather than slumber. Tunnel walls brightened, then dimmed to a soft amber. The ground underfoot solidified into familiar gritty rock. In the distance, a circular opening blossomed, revealing the dim sodium lamps of Level 4. The miners exhaled as one. Levero radioed the control center. "Passage open!" bringing them out. Applause crackled back, but Thandeka hesitated. The cave's light flickered erratically, like a candle in draught. Without the harmonic coaxing, the passage could close again before everyone cleared. She needed the song to continue, live, not a recording, until the last person crossed. She handed Lorato her phone. "Lead 'em. I'll stay and keep singing." Lorato's eyes widened. "You'll be trapped." "Not if I time it right." "Go." The rescue team shepherded the injured first. Thandeka's throat burned, but she held pitch, weaving motifs of parting and gratitude through the air. Each new phrase seemed to carve the opening wider. When Lorato was the last left inside, she grabbed Thandeka's sleeve. "Enough hero nonsense. We go together. If we both leave, the passage may slam shut," Thandeka whispered between verses. "I need one more minute." Lorato cursed, but dashed ahead. Thandeka felt the cave's attention pivot wholly toward her. The harmonics tightened around a core note, vibrating her ribcage. A vision, half memory, half dream, unfolded. She hovered above proto-Johannesburg plains 1 billion years ago, as comets rained fire. One comet shattered on impact, releasing a miniature sun, its shards burrowing beneath ancient seabeds. Those fragments slept, grew, learned the slow language of silica and pressure. Now they yearned to surface, to taste sky again. "I understand," Thandeka murmured, "but we're fragile. Open slowly, in places where we can watch you be born. We'll call them skylights." She improvised a motif, echoing the word skylight, ascending by fifths, luminous and wide. The cavern responded with a sonorous chord that felt like agreement. Energy withdrew, pooling into veins that dimmed to steady candle glow. The opening remained. Thandeka backed toward the exit, still humming. As she crossed the threshold, solid rock sealed behind her. Not a violent slam, more like curtains closing after a play. She staggered into the arms of paramedics. On the surface, families shouted with joy as miners emerged. Cameras flashed. Thandeka climbed from the lift last. Her voice was gone, a raw whisper, but her face glowed with subterranean afterlight. Reporters swarmed. She dodged them, collapsing against a water truck. Professor de Klerk appeared, summoned by crisis managers. He pressed her shoulders. You sang a mine open? I don't have words. Geo-symphony, she rasped, half-joking. Thesis pending. Corporate representatives in hard hats cornered them, eager to patent sonic excavation. Van Decker glared. Before you weaponize this, remember those miners nearly died. Then, more softly, the light isn't ore, it's alive, they scoffed. Prophet rarely listened to poetry. But Lorodos stood beside her. If she says the light breathes, we treat it with respect. Or next time, it won't be so merciful. Over the following weeks, shafts near other anomalies were sealed, pending research. Van Decker convened a coalition of geologists, acousticians, and Indigenous historians to draft ethical protocols. The media dubbed her the songsmith of the deep, she preferred translator. One afternoon in the campus acoustic lab, she played back hours of cave recordings. Students clustered around monitors, hypnotized by alien harmonies. Suddenly, the spectrum analyzer traced a motif identical to her grandmother's lullaby, returned but altered ascending, hopeful. The cave was still conversing, sending its own rough-hewn lullaby through kilometers of bedrock to the surface sensors she'd installed. She smiled, tears springing unbidden. They're learning, she whispered. Outside, Johannesburg baked beneath high veldt sun, mine dumps shimmering like dunes of crushed glass. If you listen between the city's taxis and jackhammers, you might, on certain windy days, catch a faint, continuous chord. 528 hertz, carrying the promise of an ancient light slowly finding its voice, and somewhere underneath, a billion-year-old choir waited for the next verse.